Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Hey there, guys. It is Mickey with CarryTrainer. Welcome to another episode of the Higher Line podcast. Actually, I just read that we're not supposed to say podcast anymore, and this will mean something to our guest today because he also has a podcast, because podcast basically denotes to the listener that it's something free and not valuable. I read this from a big podcaster, and that they want people to start changing the vernacular to like show or something like that, because podcast to most people just means like free shit they get online. So welcome to the CarryTrainer Higher Line extravaganza. How you like that? You don't want to say anything?
I think it's, I don't know, man. You're making that super awkward, that eye contact. I got lost for a second.
Oh, I've got my friend here, new old friend. His name's Peyton Knipple with a hard K. Although I'd rather pronounce it nipple because it's just easier not to put a hard K in there, because when somebody created that name, they weren't thinking.
Everyone prefers to pronounce it nipple.
Right. I'd call you like Nips McGee.
Oh, that works. Yeah, we can do just Nips McGee and Mickey today. That works just fine. It's like a new band, Mickey and Nips McGee.
Mickey and Nips McGee.
I can do that.
All I play is the cowbell.
I play the triangle, so we have a pretty dynamic ensemble, if you will.
That's awesome. So, seriously, you have a podcast.
Yes.
A show, whatever the hell. I'll send you that article.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious. I'm like, man, podcast sounds about right for me right now then.
I don't know why. It did make sense. And the context that they were talking about is that a lot of, even like Joe Rogan, folks like that, people still, even though it's so widely listened to, it in people's heads doesn't have the same value as going to the movies or downloading something that you pay for, because you're not paying for it.
Right. He also has like 90 million between his podcast and his YouTube account.
I didn't know it was that many.
It's insane. It's like the next closest person to him is like 30 million.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So he's doing something over there. They call it like the Joe Rogan effect if you get on his show.
I think that what he's doing is just being honest and just talking. He doesn't pretend like he doesn't smoke weed. He doesn't pretend about his personal beliefs. He just, does. I don't really even watch a lot of podcasts, but when I've seen his, it seems to be like just some brutal honesty. It's a
good conversation is what he's having. He's having the conversation that other people, I think, want to be having with other people, and this is me projecting here, the kind of conversation that people would like to actually have all the time, but somehow we're not able to. And he's able to do with like people that are hyper interesting too. Did you listen to
guys like us?
Well, I mean, I think it's a great movie. You go guys like us, spies like us, but
that's a good one.
Yeah, I know, right? But the Elon Musk podcast, like, I don't know if you listened to that episode. It was fascinating.
I'll have to check it out.
Dude, it's incredible. But when you listen to him talk to Elon Musk, you realize that, hey, it's cool that he got him in the room, but then you realize Elon Musk is the loneliest man in the world.
Is he?
Oh, God. Like, no one is, like, you and I think about things. I saw your live feed today. You were thinking about thoughts and expressing them. Like, dude, no one's
thinking about thoughts.
I know, right? It's meta thinking, right? That's the thing. Anyway, just gonna stop that.
Keep going.
But you listen to him talk to Elon Musk, and you realize Elon Musk is the loneliest person in the world, because there are very few smart people in the room. If he gets a really smart person, he being Elon Musk, gets a really smart person in the room, he's still all alone, because like no one's doing what he's doing or thinking what he's thinking. It's kind of crazy.
I get it. So, I think the one Joe Rogan podcast that I listened to that I really enjoyed was with Teddy Atlas. Have you seen that one?
No.
Teddy Atlas, famous boxer, boxing coach. And Teddy talks about Mike Tyson. It was I don't know, 15, 20 minutes long. And Teddy did all the talking, and Joe just sat there like mesmerized. And basically, Teddy Atlas is telling Joe Rogan in the world, and Teddy Atlas is like, Mr. Boxing. He's telling the listener that Mike Tyson never had a real fight in his life. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? And he expounds on it. And basically he says he had, did he lose 2 or 3 times?
I think it was 2 times, but I stopped watching boxing when I stopped playing Mike Tyson's Punch-Out.
Okay. Well, this is way deeper than boxing. And what he's talking about is, we'll say he lost twice. Go watch it if you want. He had 2 fights in his entire life. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? He had this record of, 1 million wins. And he said the 2 times he lost were the only time he ever really had a real fight, because everybody he fought was not a real challenge, which isn't a real fight if there's no challenge.
Right. That's what they said about Rocky, right? He was like fighting a bunch of just like softballs, so to speak.
Yeah. And he goes on. And he said some of these guys were like really great, like Holyfield, when he bit his ear, Mike reverted to like a place in his brain, like, I can't deal with this. I don't have the juice. And it was like a discussion on like self-belief and self-doubt, and it was pretty heavy.
Right.
Check it out.
And it's he's talking about also, I've had this conversation a lot lately about exposure to stress and getting outside your comfort zone. Like, if you don't expose yourself, or like you keep yourself in a very narrow lane, the second you step outside that lane, like your body, your brain, everything like starts to rebel, and you want to like shut that thing down. Think about like why lifeguards are at such risk of drowning, because the person they're saving is like absolutely uncomfortable, like the most uncomfortable you could possibly be in that situation. So right, it's on. Always, so now think if that's the case with Holyfield and Tyson, like when Tyson found himself like essentially drowning, like he's going to try and like stand on top of the lifeguard essentially. And his version of that, if that's what this dude was saying, is biting that dude's ear off. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
I got to get away from this scary thing here.
That was a lot of it. You have to go listen to the whole discussion. I don't want to I don't want people to get the wrong idea of what I'm saying or what Teddy was saying. But if you go listen to it, it's pretty deep. I think some people probably listened to it and were like, screw that guy. Mike Tyson was the greatest.
Mike Tyson's the greatest.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you don't know anything about stress yourself or uncomfortable feelings.
It depends on who you talk to, I suppose.
Why are you here?
In this room? I did air quotes because people can see that.
Why are you here?
I'm here to probably talk about our experience of the stress and leadership and like how we develop those things, and kind of what I just talked about, how being like, if you stay in your lane, if you like stay in a comfortable space, then anything even remote, even like close to being outside that becomes an uncomfortable thing for you. And it's the hardest thing for us to want to do. And
keep going, keep telling me.
And my idea is not an original thought. Once again, I'm not the first person to say this. And you and I have kind of talked about that fact, not that I'm unoriginal, but that there's no really original idea. It's just original application. But stress just is. And I was actually asked by Norwich University to write a paper, not a paper, but like an article on that. It just got published 2 days ago, I think, with Norwich University. They're a college out of Vermont. But dude, yeah, stress is just a thing. And like, you could be in a situation like a stress shoot, right? Guns are kind of your thing. They're kind of your jam. But stress shoot to you is wildly different than someone who has a 6-hour, safety class and just got their carry permit. Like, those are 2 wildly different experiences if you put both people in the same situation, right? So
tracking.
Stress just is really like a thing, and it's how we expose ourselves and experience that stress. And then characterizing it is super important. When I say characterizing it, like, how do we actually like then look at that situation and say that was a good or bad or good or learning situation? So
my man Z, Green Beret, 5th group guy, he likes to say, and I repeat this so much that it's now part of our written curriculum, exposure equals composure.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah. And it's, go ahead.
And competence equals confidence.
Yeah, man.
Like, if I'm competent in a thing, I'm most likely going to exhibit that through a confident act. If I'm unconfident, if you're like, hey, man, get up and talk about thing X, and I'm like, dude, I don't know about thing Y, and I'll look like a dumb. I don't know if we can cuss on this podcast.
You can.
Okay, cool. I just want to make sure I'll try and keep the F-bombs to a minimum because fairly prolific in my life. However, also that. But you asked me to talk about thing X. I'm like, I only know about thing Y. I'm gonna sound goofy, but you put me in front of a situation where I know about thing Y, like I may sound more confident.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So competence breeds confidence.
Right on.
And that becomes fairly clear when the act is then a thing, like when you do the thing.
Makes sense.
You
ever seen one of those?
I have seen a few of those. A little leader marker board says TACP on it.
Yeah. So tell everybody what TACP is.
So TACP, it's an acronym really, TACP. But you look at it and you say TACP means Tactical Air Control Party. It is a job inside the Air Force, and the individuals that do that job in the Air Force, their sole task and purpose is to call in airstrikes to keep it fairly generic. Their job is to make things fall off airplanes onto stuff in a very precise manner.
So you're like a or that guy would be like a air traffic controller / artillery guy / special operations soldier.
If you could have three of things bang and like make one baby, then sure. Yeah, it's a fairly, when you think about like the aspects you are managing, everything that's in the air, like that's a thing. Like you're managing that, you're not landing it unless it's a helicopter and it's doing you're landing or picking something up. But you like there three airspace or the air is three-dimensional like everything else. All that stuff flies around in it, that stuff being airplanes. And you have bullets and artillery shells and people and all this other stuff going on. And the TACP is designed to kind of see that three-dimensional picture from the air to the ground. And if there is a threat on the ground that warrants an airstrike that requires some kind of aerial delivered munition, then the TACP will perform that task. But that is based on the Army ground commander, the ground commander. Like that person has to give us a thumbs up. We can't just be like indiscriminately like slinging bombs. We're like, hey guys, I got some bombs. You want to do airstrikes? It's not. It's a fairly controlled thing, even though it seems it is dynamic but very well controlled, and almost an art form when you get guys that are really good at it.
Okay. And that's what you did for a chunk of your career.
Yeah, 16 years. I did TACP stuff. Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, man. I think I was talking about this with you on the phone. Like I know 4 or 5 dudes that was their job. And one of the things we were chatting about when we were introducing ourselves to each other is like when I grew up, not only did I not know anybody that was a special operations soldier, but that's not true. I knew one guy that was an Army Ranger like during World War I.
Dude, that's rad though.
Yeah, because
like that dude.
I'm saying like you like had like a friend's dad or something that served, but now it's like, man, I know like 10 guys that do this, 10 guys that do that, but in the whole totality of the Air Force, Army, military operations, how many dudes do that?
How many guys do TACP? I think it's barely 1,000 are active. I don't have the exact numbers on me because I carry those around all the time, obviously. But I think it's barely 1,000. It's not a large percentage of the Air Force that does jobs like that in general. So it's pretty cool, I think.
How many times did you deploy?
It's either 8 or 9. I think it's 8. Probably I'll err on the side of caution here and say 8.
Okay. Don't want to be inflating your numbers.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. Once to Iraq, and then the rest were to Afghanistan.
Okay.
So it wasn't too bad.
So why I bring this up is your discussion, your writing on things like stress and stress inoculation and gaining composure. It's not just based on some academic learning.
Sure.
Right.
I would say, yeah, that's correct. I guess like the standard the standard, like the book answer is like, for leadership and stress and those things, it's like 30% academic and 70% experiential. I think I've hit that balance at least. I think I live pretty well within that like formula. So I do have the experience, and I hopefully have some academic understanding. Not people have more than me. Let's put it that way. But I have some at least.
Well, I don't think that my question was, do you have all the experience in the entire world? I just want to make sure that our listener, viewer here, understands what we're talking about today. Where it's coming from.
Got it.
So, can you talk a little bit about your time in service? I know some of the stuff is probably things you can't talk about, and you're still actually in right now.
Yeah, I mean, where would you like me to start? I guess I don't know.
I mean, just give the listener, the viewer, an idea of who you are, what you did. A couple minutes. You don't need to go like then they taught me to tie my boots. Like
right. They spent a lot of time teaching me how to tie my boots, though. It was all Velcro till I got to basic training. But no, I joined the military straight out of high school. I'd always wanted to join the military. So I was in basic training at 18. I became a TACP right after I turned 19. And
what year was that about?
2000, December 15th, 2000, I graduated TACP school.
So you went in right before the whole world decided to go to war for 2 decades.
Yeah, and I was convinced that it would take me my whole career to see war. I was like, it's just like a fighter pilot, I guess. Excuse me. They like...
You hate... Just so you guys know, he hates mouth noises on a podcast.
I just feel so bad about it. I'm like, come on, man. No one wants to hear me slobbering all over the place. But
so you sign up. You're 19 years old, and you're thinking, I'm never gonna go.
Yeah, I never thought I'd get to test it out, so to speak. By December 3rd of 2001, I was in Uzbekistan, which is just north of Afghanistan. And as we were figuring that whole war on terror thing out right after 9/11, which was a pretty cool experience for me. From that experience in 2001, I was a conventional TACP, so think large Army, like 82nd Airborne, 101st Airborne, 10th Mountain Division. I was a TACP that supported those very large Army maneuver units, think like World War II giant force-on-force stuff. Okay. I did that, and then I was a TACP instructor. So the place I graduated from in December of 2000, I went back to be an instructor there for 4 years. And then from there, I became what we call a soft TACP, which is a Special Operations Forces TACP. And I was aligned with one of the Ranger battalions in the 75th Ranger Regiment. So I supported 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment as one of their JTACs. JTAC is the technical term for someone who calls in airstrikes, TACP being the job, JTAC being like the term. Okay. So I did that with the Ranger Battalion.
Explain that one more time. Vern's explained that to me.
Yeah. So TACP is like the term. How do I want to explain this? So think like everyone's a doctor. You have an MD, they have an MD, but that one's a family physician, and that one's a cardiothoracic surgeon.
Okay.
So like that's the best way to explain it. Like everyone's a doctor.
So wait, is TACP doctor, and then JTAC is like cardiothoracic
specialty
surgeon?
It's like TACP is the qualification or the field, and then JTAC is in the specialty.
So what other you guys got, like weathermen that also are underneath that?
No. So there's another job in the Air Force that calls in airstrikes that also earns the title of JTAC, and that's combat control.
Okay.
So there's two jobs in the Air Force that do airstrikes.
And what's the difference between a combat controller and the JTAC?
Okay, so the broad difference is a TACP who becomes a JTAC. A TACP's only job, like TACP only exists to do airstrikes. That's it. That is their only task and purpose. Whereas combat controllers have multiple skill sets, and they fall solely under special operations. TACPs can do conventional or special operations. And you cannot do special operations before you do conventional time in the TACP career field. You go in as a combat controller, that's called special operations pure. You don't ever leave special operations. And they have multiple skill sets to include air traffic control in austere environments, surveys for airfields and landing zones, and close air support, which is the airstrikes. So those are the broad differences. There's some employment capabilities that are different, like how they get to the fight, they being TACP and combat control. There's some differences there as well, or how rapidly a TACP or a combat controller like gets those experiences, essentially.
I see. So go back now. You're a kid. I'm never going to go to war, or if I do, it might be 20 years from now.
Right. So I'm a kid, never going to go to war. 9/11 happens. I go to war a few times. I go to be a TACP instructor. I assess for and get selected to be a soft TACP. I support the Ranger Battalion. My mom gets dementia and gets sick. I have to take care of her. I leave active duty and join the Air National Guard. I was on the West Coast. So I had to get to the East Coast. And so I'm currently in the Air National Guard, not as a TACP.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that's me.
That whole deployment thing got condensed to about a half a sentence there.
Yeah. I did 8 deployments. It's weird. Cause to me, it's just deployments, man. Like, I just guess that's what you do. So 8 deployments. I think it's like 4 or 5 years overseas is what the time equaled out to inside those deployments. That's
pretty intense.
And sometimes like super duper boring. You'd be like, there were like 1 or 2 deployments where it's just like, could not have been more boring.
Just sitting,
and you're just like, what the heck? And then other deployments, they were full on almost the whole time. Gotcha. And so there's some, if we're going to tie this into stress, there's some stress experiences there.
Sure.
And
that is where I'm going with this. I just want to make sure that we paint a good picture of where this is being drawn from. Yeah. With all those deployments, I've probably done, hundreds of like missions outside the wire, if that's what you want to call it, sure. Aligned with an Army maneuver unit of whatever kind, pretty fun. Your voice just like tapers off of any kind.
Do I need to get really close to the mic?
No, it's more or less. I think honestly, you just don't enjoy talking about this stuff, and that's okay. And I'm not trying to push you to. What I want to get to is you spent years doing things that caused you to have to function at a high level under stress, right? Yeah. I actually. So you always remember your first, right? That's what they say. So my first mission ever, I was 19, and I'm coming from upstate New York. That's where I was stationed, and going like we're like maybe like 100, 200, 300 feet above sea level. My first combat mission in Afghanistan, we infilled like 90, like we flew in and landed on a mountain at 9,500 feet, and I weighed a solid 140, a real hefty, stout 140. And, with all my gear on for my first mission ever, none of us had any war experience. We didn't know what the hell we were doing, so I had everything. I was like, I'm going to need this. I'm going to need this. I'm going to need 80 gajillion rounds of ammo, like 90,000 million batteries. It was, so my pack weighed like 100 some odd pounds, and I'm a 140 pound kid. Wow.
And we land at 9,500 feet, and I'd never experienced altitude before. Like, I didn't get altitude sickness, but I couldn't figure out why I couldn't breathe.
Sure.
And the first thing that happened when we landed was I had to start doing airstrike stuff. Everyone's like, hey, man, we really would like you to call in airstrikes, please. I was like, and I remember like not being stressed because I didn't have any context for the experience. And I was just going through like a checklist of things I had to do in my head. I was like, okay, I got to do this, then I got to do that, then I got to do this, then I got to do that. And I always remember that experience because like I literally just prioritized and executed. And I'm stealing that from Jocko Willink because this 19-year-old me did not say prioritize and execute at all. I might have been 20 then. So 20-year-old me still can't drink. But I just prioritized what I had to do. And I was like, okay, this is important. That's important. That's important. Okay, get those things done. All right. And that was purely because of training. And I think I used that quote earlier last week with a few people, and it's been said a lot. You don't, rise to the experience or rise to the expectation. You fall to the level of your training. literally the only reason I was successful in that event was because of the kind of training I had. Okay, the stress inside the training that I had, you know. So that was actually a fairly large lesson for me at a very early age. But I will never forget that, like, ever, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, you were just a baby.
Yeah, I was, and I couldn't have been more stoked. I was like, "Oh, cool, man, combat. This is gonna be fun." Couldn't have been more stoked. Like, we're flying in the helicopter, and like I'd had limited time in a helicopter. I was like, "Dude, I'm on a helicopter. This is rad. I'm in Afghanistan. Super fun." I was
fully grasping the rim.
Not at all. Not at all. It was really a cool thing because, like, it's like being brand new. Like, you know, everything was, you just experienced it. It was pretty awesome, you know.
That's sometimes a blessing in disguise, you know.
Yeah, when you don't know what to expect, like jumping out of an airplane, you have no idea what to expect, so you just do it. The next time you're like, oh, now I'm scared.
Yeah. When we talked the other day, you and I, we talked for well over an hour just chatting about some different ideas and things that resonated with us. One of the things that you mentioned, which I told you to write down, which I actually remembered, is you're like, I don't need to write it down, I'll remember. We were talking about trying to distill it down in my head to the exact sentence, but basically how we behave and act in the world.
Yes.
And your thought was what you do at home versus what you do out in the world. How did you phrase that?
I said, anything you want to take outside the house, you first need to test it inside the house. Okay. If you want to take a leadership style or a behavior and you want to take it outside the house, you're like, I want to do this thing. You need to first determine if it's successful at home. That's my personal approach to it. Like, if I'm not going to treat my family this way, or if I'm going to treat my family this way, like, I need to make sure that's effective before I take it anywhere else, because people, like, there's a bunch of studies on it, but people essentially have the same kinds of needs, like, as just like individual human beings. And if you cannot affect leadership behaviors at home that help kind of meet those needs, you're probably gonna have a hard time authentically doing it outside the house and like conveying that in a meaningful way to a potentially a larger group of people. So the way you treat yourself at home. I don't have kids. I'm sure that will add a new dimension to this, my thoughts and views on leadership. But one of my best friends all have kids, and I see the same things that, they're very mindful of how they act and behave around their kids. And it's all with a deliberate intention to create like a good team at home. Okay. Like I refer to the family, like my wife and I are a team. I've only understood family, like me being married, in a team concept, because I've grown up around, like, in the military in a very close knit team environment. And like they say, like, bonds of, brotherhood and all this other stuff in the military, there's a lot of truth to that statement, because you share experiences and how do you say this? When you experience discomfort together, okay, there's a different kind of bond. Because you actually understand what people are made of at that point. Right. And I think that's a lot of what the military can give you too, is like that growth through shared kind of discomfort. And so a family is a team, in my opinion. You do everything you can for the team. Okay. You give what you can to the team, and then you go outside the house, and then you look at groups of people or who you work with, who you integrate with. It's all team related, essentially.
Sure.
So that's how I look at leadership. Well, that's not the only way, but like, that's how I approach things I'm going to do or how I'm going to behave, and I try so that I'm as completely me as I can.
That's really what started that discussion that we were having. It wasn't so much, just so the listener viewer understands, we weren't saying like, test shit on your family.
Right.
We were saying how many people actually, and I can use myself for example. Oh, you're so funny. You're so great. Ha, ha, ha. They don't know when I come home, I'm like, angry, pissed. I don't want to talk to anybody. I think what actually spawned that part of our conversation is I said I've been guilty personally of sharing the best parts of me with coworkers, students, customers, and then, oh, I'm tired. I just spent the day on the freaking computer talking. I don't have energy to go to dinner or play catch. Or you remember that part of that artist?
Yeah, I do. And I actually, so it's cool to talk about these kinds of things. And one of the things I say about my podcast is it's accessible, relatable, applicable. And I say like success is not linear. It's got ups and downs. It's got ebbs and flows. Dude, even last weekend,
my success is linear. It's a rocket ship of a trajectory.
Well, there's that statement about the 100 warriors and then 80 are garbage and 10 are awesome. And then there's the one, like you're the one, man.
I'm just kidding, but
I know.
Just don't you're right. It does ebb and flow. Vicissitudes.
Ooh, look at you.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I like that one. Yeah. But last weekend, I was fairly self-absorbed with the podcast and creating engagement and like thinking thoughts and being creative. And I realized that I shit out of my wife. I didn't spend time with my wife that I could have spent time with my wife. So I actually went out and bought her a card, flowers, chocolate, whatever. Cause I also don't believe
an asshole.
Yeah. I was like, and I wrote her a card. I was like, I'm sorry. I got my priorities screwed up last weekend. Cause I didn't have to, I can manage my time differently. I do. But so
was she, and not to get into your personal life, did she indicate to you hey,
not at all.
Okay. You caught yourself and were like, hey, that was stupid.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
And, so when you talk about I've been guilty of giving the best parts of myself to something else, dude, ain't nobody perfect. And everyone's gonna misstep at some point. I think you even talked about that a little bit today in your live feed. You're gonna miss shots. You're gonna pull rounds. Own that just like you own the good stuff. Right. And I was like, man, I can do better. And my wife was like, oh, you're fine. No, I totally get it. You're working hard. I'm like, cool. But I can also pull my head out of my ass and, do the right thing and own when I'm wrong. And actually it works out better that way too. And I think one of the nicest things my wife said to me is, you are consistently you no matter where you're at. When she talked about me, she's like, I really appreciate that you're not something different around your other people. You're a clown with me and you're a clown everywhere else. And she appreciates that.
Hey, that's legit. That's something else that I feel too many young guys, especially, that's one of the things I was chatting about today, is that we feel like we need to create some, a leader, for example. You said to me the other day, and I don't mean to tell your secrets, but you thought at one point in your life, being loud and yelling was leading.
Yeah.
Right. And that sometimes we learn these things from others around us, but sometimes it's our machismo too. If I look the part, I'm leading or I'm in control. It's no, you're just being an asshole, man.
Right. And you can't realize any of that stuff. You've got to be able to think critically about your own actions. And B, you've got to be mature enough to take feedback on your own actions. And this is me being honest, not self-deprecating. I lacked that maturity for a very long time.
Good catch.
I know. I got you. I've actually been thinking about that statement ever since you said it, and I was like, I was like, dang it, Mickey, you little ninja. It got my mind. But I was very immature. So I was not open to feedback at a younger, in my military career.
Sure.
And I think if I had been more open, to that kind of feedback, I may be more successable.
Could be a general by now.
God, it's kind of hard for enlisted people to make general, but you
understood the point.
I could be the one.
Remember your logic there.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we're bouncing around a little bit. My fault, not yours, because I'm asking you different stuff. But really the reason that when you and I were chatting the other day, the conversation, the thing that we kept kind of discussing was what I was chatting about on that live feed today was like authenticity in life. You can't lead if you're inauthentic. You can't really connect with people in a meaningful way. And you can't really, as a individual, because at the end of the day, that's really, while we love our spouses and our jobs, what's really is important is us, number one. Like,
Dale Carnegie said it best.
Yeah.
What
did Dale say?
He didn't say it exactly like this. I'm going to paraphrase for Dale, if he doesn't mind. He said, nobody loves you like you love you. All right. Like you're first and foremost going to be concerned with yourself.
You have to be,
and I don't know how to say that to make it not sound negative, but it is actually not negative.
It's 100% not negative.
And that's why people like hearing their name.
Mm-hmm.
That's what people take pride in their name, especially their last name.
I read something once about people when they look at photos. Like if I showed you a photo of us at a party, you consciously or subconsciously, the first thing that you will do is find yourself in that picture and see.
Like you'll assess yourself.
Yeah. Did I like my smile? And it could be like, 20 other friends and people in the picture, but you're going to find yourself first.
And if you put two people in a room with the same photo, both people were in the photo, I think it's most likely that they comment politely or comment positively about the other person before they say, "Oh, I look really good in this photo." They'll most likely notice positive qualities about someone else in the photo before they're willing to, like, hey, that was a good hair day, or my smile wasn't crooked that day, like whatever. It's pretty interesting. So, but because they've noticed, and the reason they'll do that is because they've noticed the things they don't like about themselves, or things they're more critical about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not like, hey, like I'm all jacked up, but they'll say I'm all jacked up, but this person looks, super cool or rad or whatever. Like they'll be the balance of the compliment will be offset. It's pretty interesting.
I'm tracking.
So
we, as we're like going into these different thought threads, I keep coming back to the point in my head that when we chatted the other day about that how you behave at home.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of that all the time. Like I think to myself, something as simple as I've used up all my juice when I'm out in the world. But at some point though, like I think that can become like a diminishing return thought, because we have to go work. Like if your job is physical, like I once upon a time worked with a guy, big Polish kid. He was a weightlifter and a boxer, and we were doing physical work. His name was Mariusz. And I'm like, dude, you're like moving, like you weigh 100 pounds more than me of muscle, and you're moving half as much in 3 times the time. What the frick? And he's like, I have to save my energy for the gym. And it was like, dude, you're at work right now, like being paid. Like, so you have to go kick some ass.
Yes. And that's where the team concept comes into play. So the definition of teamwork that I was raised with in the TACP community and in the special operations community is a group of individuals working together to achieve a common goal while putting aside all personal comforts and desires for that team. So when you talk about coming back home, you're like, hey, man, like, you have been working very hard, and, you need some time to like tune out and like recharge. Like when you look at the team concept of a family, like that's when the other people in the team, whether it's just one person, your wife or like wife, kids, whatever, they recognize that. And then you have that trust and transparency inside that team, because that's what you're looking for inside any kind of team, is this trust and transparency inside a team. So in the home, you've got to create trust and transparency as well. Hopefully that's one of the reasons people get married, is that thing. And my wife can look at me and be like, I can come home and say, hey babe, like I had a cock a day and I need to just go heads down for a second, so to speak, and chill out. And she can recognize that, and that's what the team is about. It's, the Ranger Creed, there's a portion of the Ranger Creed that says, I will carry my share of the load 100% and then some. Okay. And that means like you're going to do everything you can for the team. So if I'm having a hard time, if I can't carry my load, so to speak, my wife then picks up the 100% and then some, and then it becomes that balance. And that's then what we try to take to any organization that we impact, any group, anything, any whatever it is. We take that mindset and we try and recreate that everywhere we go.
Moving mountains.
Yeah. And that's the cool thing about being on a team, you know? And that's why I say those behaviors in the home. If I can't create a team in the home, how can I create it anywhere else?
Sure.
In my opinion, or I'm I'm being ineffective somewhere. So
the mindset term you just used, it's fun nowadays. You know, everybody that teaches some type of combatives or fighting art, the term mindset's thrown around so much that to most people they think of like a battle cry or this mindset to overcome at all odds, not including things like teamwork and having this desire to put forth like a real honest effort. It's not always about, blood and guts and cordite and
so you can still attack, but I talk about, I say like a default aggressive. So Jocko Willink says, be default aggressive, right? And it talks about attack and all those other things. Like you can attack anything. Like you can attack kindness. Like you can be the most kind person on the planet. So like this, where people get this mindset, like they just like, it's super rage cage all the time. Like, no, dude, like go be the kindest person you can be.
Yeah.
Okay. Be like the nicest person you can be. Be like the most empathetic and perceptive person you can be. Okay.
Should we even bother attaching the word attack to the word kindness? I mean, couldn't we say like just be super kind?
You could. I like the way it conveys like how aggressive you can be about it. Like kindness in itself could be perceived as potentially passive, but it doesn't have to be a passive act. It doesn't have to be like this delicate thing. Like you could just like, dude, be the most kind human being.
I rage kindness.
Yeah. Like don't let anyone beat you at kindness. Like be competitively kind. So you can take that mindset, if you want to call it that, and it can work in both directions, just understanding when and how to apply it.
I do want to call it that because I think that's what it is, right?
Yeah.
That like overall, it's interesting. Many of my friends have backgrounds like yours, or most of the guys that I pal around with or would consider to be friends are leaders of business. They're leaders in some way, shape, or form in their sect. And not everybody's like that, like my family, my parents had 11 kids. Some of them are outgoing, some are more reserved and timid. So I think sometimes like these models of living, a guy like Jocko or Tony Robbins, somebody completely different, but they convey these things where it's like, raw, and some people are like, I can't relate. Like, that's just not me.
Right. And that's why there's so many different versions of a message.
Yeah.
Like, think about a evangelical preacher, how they deliver.
Amen, somebody.
Right. But who's like, that may not land with another person, but a person like that same message delivered by like you or Jocko, same exact message, different delivery. And it basically, it ties into like the idea of rhetoric, like how something is delivered and how people identify with the message. Mm-hmm. Like that's how the message actually lands. But it's just where you're going to find the message. Okay. And how you choose to receive it, so to speak. And that's why there's, I think these like Tony Robbins and Jocko Willink, different, but they still provide these calls to action that for the people who listen and receive that message, it is change. It is impactful to them. Okay. But if you flip the audience and you put a room full of Tony Robbins at a Jocko Willink muster, they're gonna be like, nah, hard pass, dog. And you put the dudes at a Jocko Willink muster at a Tony Robbins thing, they're like, dude, let's rage. Why are we not raging right now? So it's where they're receiving the message from and I say like, 2 plus 2, 1 plus 3, and 4 plus 0 all equal 4. It's a different way to get there, but it ends up in the same place.
Sure.
Okay. And I think that's what a lot of it is with the mindset stuff and how we're delivering or how people are receiving, and being mindful of how we deliver things.
Who is listening to you? Who are you trying to impact? Who's your target audience? Who are you talking to? Who did you decide to create a podcast around? Who are you talking to right now? Don't you dare say my name.
Oh man, I was going to do it. Hashtag dad jokes. I love it so much. But so my podcast, I want to reach as many people as possible. I know that sounds fairly cliche and like, oh, duh. But I'm sure who's listening to it right now are some friends of a friend of a friend of a friend, kind of more likely in the military space or like the firearm space, or, the public service kind of space, like Leo, firefighter, EMS, whatever. And then some and that's probably your vast majority. Then you probably have some like left and rights of that are picking it up right now. But the goal is to reach as many people as I can to start shaping the idea and thought of growth and development as broad as possible. Because if you and I have a conversation, we may have fairly similar thoughts on some things. We may have some different thoughts on some things. That's actually really important, because you get those different thoughts together and you either come up with a new idea potentially, which is ideal, like something that works better. Okay. Mm-hmm. But my goal is to get enough people thinking critically. I call it critically, the critical thinking independent human being, who is not just, receiving the message and acting at that first level. Mm-hmm. They're looking like second, third, fourth orders deeper. And like, what is this message actually saying? Like, what can I actually do with this? How can I apply this, in my own space, in my own life? And if it just gets people thinking about something different, like, that's awesome. If it makes their life better, awesomer. If it makes their life and other people's lives better because of the application of it, awesomest. Okay. Awesomest. That's a technical term.
It's a good one.
I think it's an industry term, really. But
another dad joke.
I know, right? I'm the best, and I don't have kids. I'm ready. I'm gonna be a great dad if I keep these jokes going. But
or at least an unfunny one.
I think that's the goal. I think that's how I know I've won.
I got your elevator pitch there on who you're talking to, but why? Why should people listen to you?
Because I'm awesome. Thanks for teaming me up. I'm handsome. But because of my approach, which is accessible, relatable, and applicable. And in my first episode of the podcast, I talk about, like, as a kid, I grew up in the 80s, really. Like, that's when I was, 1 through 10 years old. Okay, dude, the 8-bit Nintendo was barely a thing. So the access to information was low, or it was harder to get access to information. And a lot of it, you're like, you even said, like, I wasn't around a lot of these cool people. Like, I didn't know this person, that person, this person. And now fast forward, whatever years later, you have access to all these people. Like I said, I told you, like, you were one of the first people I followed on Instagram.
No, that's cool, man.
Because there's an accessibility to the information that we have now that has never existed ever. Yeah. Like, anyone can get an education, formalized or not. Like, you can audit classes from Harvard, like, online for free. Yeah. You've got an internet connection and the willingness to sit your ass in a seat. Like, you can, like, quote unquote, like, take a class from Harvard.
I did a free semester of constitutional training from Hillsdale College, done by like 4 world-class professors, free of charge.
Dude, how awesome is that, right? Like, that hasn't existed. And the podcast or the shows now is brand new, like extravaganza. I like that. But this almost is curated, like, information is being curated at this point to be delivered to people in a digestible, like, format. And like when I talked about, like, receiving a message, Like you can pick who you receive your message from now. Like,
right on.
Like it's ridiculous. So ridiculous in a cool way.
Just for clarity, like whereas I used to just turn on the nightly news, and I chose from whoever was sitting behind the news desk. That was,
or you had to go to the library and do decimal that shit. Hopefully the book was there, or you go to Barnes and Nobles and like sit in there for whatever time and read a book. Like you don't have to do that necessarily anymore. Like you can literally like get an education on your way to work. Okay. So I think I do have some experience inside the areas I talk about, the podcast about leadership, growth, development, self-awareness being a pretty big one. I think a lot of people can start with the self-awareness component. And that's, well, you have to, actually, that's the foundation of most things. And then like humanness and manliness. So that's kind of like fairly broad for what the podcast is about, but I do think I have some experience inside those things. And I say I argue that I'm capable. It's up to people to determine whether I'm qualified. Like I could sit here and tell you like, hey man, I've got a master's in science and leadership and I blah, 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 blah. Like, cool, man. You put two doctors in the same room. One's more capable than the other. They're both qualified. Like it is. So it's up to whoever listens to me to tell me or to feel that I'm qualified, like to them. Okay. It's perception based. You know, you go to two different people and one's like, oh, I love how that person does it. And so to speak, the person's like, I can't stand it. So it's a perspective. Right. But I do believe I'm capable of having the conversation.
Sure.
I do believe I'm capable of, you know, helping extend a discussion, you know, or present an idea.
If you could do one thing with all of the time that you're spending in this podcast, if when you're dead and gone, what's the one thing, the one that if you could ensure that all of this effort was for something?
Okay.
The 20 years sitting in hillsides and blowing stuff up and all that jazz.
The one thing, people get to where I'm at faster than I got to it. Like people develop quickly and more effectively than I did.
So when I hear that, what that means to me is people will enjoy more of their life.
Yes. I like that better. Do that one.
Well, no, I'm not saying, I mean, I think but that would be the outcome. Like if I get somewhere faster, it's like, hey man, why are you driving so fast? Because I want to get to the party, man. Like if we're there an hour earlier, it's an hour more of partying, right?
Right.
So that's kind of like, if I can, like, I wouldn't change all of my mistakes, maybe a few, but most of them I wouldn't change because I wouldn't be here without them. But looking back, like, man, there's a good decade of shit that I surrounded myself with, you know, just financial, relationship, legal problems, just like all manner of nonsense that I created in my life. It's like, would you really like not change that? Well, yes and no, but like as an older man, I see the point is that you're making is the sooner we get to somewhere like now, I'm going to finish with you. It's Friday night. I'm going to figure out what the family's going to do for dinner and we're going to enjoy the evening. A younger man would be like, I wish I could afford dinner or something like that. So that's kind of like the. Yeah.
So I had a buddy, a few of us were talking and, you know, about careers, stuff like that. I was like, man, if I had the mindset now that I had early in my career, like, because I gave myself like a B+ at being a TACP. Like I was a pretty good TACP. I wasn't the greatest TACP. I give myself a B+. Like I'm flirting with like super success as a TACP. It's like, man, if I had that mindset I have now back then, like I'd be like an A to A+ TACP. So like if I can, and I'm not like, I love my experiences. Like, dude, like I would give them up. Like I had some, you know, I think we both share, we have some unique youthful experiences. I wouldn't give those up for a minute. I loved them. Like in hindsight, like I'm very thankful they happened, you know, but if I can get this information to people where they can take it and use it sooner and make themselves better and then make other people better sooner. Like how rad is that? You know, cause like they're making themselves better, making the people around them better, making the place, their place, whatever that place is, better. Awesome. How cool.
One of the things I was musing on yesterday, for example, like the genre of social media that you and I view, like I know you like some of the stuff that I don't like male exotic dance channels.
Yeah, there's a whole section of that I'm really into.
But like the self-preparedness, self-improvement, physical health, shooting, that like little genre of social media. Like nowadays, the social media is something like when people will say like, oh, it's the internet or oh, it's social media. Like, no, that's people. Like it's not. For example, somebody makes like a stupid comment and they're like, it's the internet, dude.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's an asshole making an asshole comment through this media of the internet. And where I'm going with that is this, like it's your comment a minute ago about like we have access to all this information. Social media is also like condensed it and refined and distilled it. So like something totally off topic, but it'll make a point. Do I press check my pistol in training? I had a guy on our YouTube channel who's like runs a law enforcement training academy, runs the firearm division. That's the dumbest thing in the world. I would never teach somebody that. And I'm like, really? Is there still somebody out there that argues the validity of understanding the condition of your weapon? And of course, there's context to that. But like these ideas get threshed out in front of millions of eyes in like real time. And we kind of like arrive collectively, which is a whole nother cool discussion.
Yeah.
We arrive collectively at it because people test it too, like whatever it might be. Like I want to go learn the best way to make a souffle. I guarantee there are hundreds of people on social media that have like tried it, done it, figured it out.
I tell my wife that all the time. Like, I tell my wife that sounds like an asshole thing to say.
Because only women should be making souffles.
Right. Yeah. It's always souffles. It's never anything else.
Well, they should know how to make sandwiches. They should know how to iron slacks.
I'm steering away from this conversation.
I got no issue with it. Dude, my wife's an executive.
My mom, we used to treat our clothes like garbage as kids. And my mom was like, all right, nerd, I'm not doing that for you anymore. Like, learn how to iron your own clothes.
Sure.
So like age 10, I was ironing my own clothes because like I was treating them like crap. So like, but to land this airplane, I was telling my wife, like, I just go to the internet to find out how to do it. Like, I was curious about like job titles and descriptions. I'm like, what's the definition for this job title? And I just went to the internet. Like, I didn't know how to change my brakes. Send me to the internet. Like, how do I make this thing? I'm like, I don't know. I'll just probably find it on the internet. Like, it's all there, man. Like, you could, if you choose to use it like deliberately, like with a purpose, you know, like if you think critically about the things you're exposing yourself to, even on the internet, it becomes this incredible tool. Even on Instagram, you know, I actually had my Instagram account, that one, the one that you and I connected on, to specifically find out how like podcasters and people in like our little genre of the internet, how they actually create engagement, how they actually interact with their followers. Because I had a very private Instagram account before that, and like I had like 100 people following me, and it was just like, oh, your kid looks so cute today with cake all over his face.
Sure.
Like, okay, but if I want to like be good at interneting in a way that reaches more people, like who are the people that I kind of want to follow that are good at it? What are they doing? So I did that for 2 years before I even was like, hey guys, I have a podcast, you know? And so I used Instagram deliberately to understand how other people that were successful were doing it, so to speak.
And that requires some critical thinking.
Yeah. Right. Critical thinking, independent human being that can look at something and say, that checks, or this doesn't smell right. Let me think a little bit more about this. And is that valid? Does that support my end state? You know? And I wasn't thinking about that when I was 25. I promise you.
Sure. And that, which brings me back to this broad point of our discussion. Like, there's no excuse. Like that was what I was thinking about yesterday. Like, you literally, if you have a little bit of desire, there's no excuse. Like, once upon a time, nobody knew where the North Pole was exactly.
Right.
And like, now there's no excuse. I can see it on a map. I can see it on a globe. I could pay somebody to fly my ass right there if I could afford it. Like, if I want to know how to start a podcast, there's no excuse not to know. If I want to know how to shoot a gun accurately, there is no excuse other than like will, determination, those kinds of things. If I want to know how to be a good dad or get over an addiction or whatever, like the info is not only there, it's there. Like you said, you want Jocko, do you want the evangelical? Like, you can pick 50 people to tell you how you want it.
Absolutely. It's literally like, and I'm holding my phone, like it's literally in my hand. Like there's very few things that I can't do on my phone. Like, or I can't find out quickly enough to like solve like the immediate triage incident of like whatever I have to know. And then like dive deeper later when I'm in like a more like,
what's my favorite ABBA song?
Dancing Queen for sure. Yeah. I'm sad. I know that.
I was actually didn't do a good job of imitating you.
Is it ABBA or ABBA? I thought
it was ABBA.
I thought it was ABBA.
Dancing Queen.
Just like that. Yeah. Absolutely. Maybe ABBA's right. I don't know. But,
your point begs the question then, how does one develop the desire? Because that's really, you said self-awareness, like everything starts with that self-love and like you need to be aware that I don't love myself so that I do love myself, so that I go down this road and wish to endeavor to better myself and not be 40 by the time I figure out I wished I started doing this when I was 18.
Right.
Like, where does that, like, where does that fire spark?
In me personally, or like in a person?
That's like I think for me, that's like I gave up trying to light that fire in people because I realized no one could light it in me. I had parents that tried to tell me, do this, do that, teachers, friends, judges looking down at me saying, hey, kid, I'm going to lock you up if you don't do this or that. But eventually, in some people, it never sparks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah,
and we talked about this, and that's fun, man. We talked about relationships, right? We said like, hey, like you could be in the world's worst relationship, and it could be obvious to the entire world. If someone like put your relationship up against a thing, was like, hey guys, do you think this person should leave this person? Everyone's like 100% yes, leave that person.
But I love her.
You know, like it's not going to matter until like you get to your point where you're like, whoa, like I got punched in the face 3 times for the 5th time. Maybe I shouldn't be with this person anymore, but it took 5 times, man. You know, like it at some point, like you have to, as an individual, like get there yourself. And then like, once you get to that place, it's like making the deliberate choice to make the change. So, and then that's when the accessibility aspect comes into play. Like it's literally waiting for you. Whatever it is waiting for you if you choose to get it. Okay. Like it's there. And whether that's because like someone told you about it and like sparked something in your mind, or like it's something you've always been interested in, you're like, okay, now's the time, whatever, you know, it's some of it has to come, most of it has to come from the person. Okay. And then it's a choice on how they choose to use the tool. Okay. I always say like the world's greatest tool used poorly is a piece of garbage. All right. I always like, you look at 2 golfers
and it'll make garbage.
Right. You look at 2 golfers and the Sunday hack is like, oh, my clubs suck. I need new clubs. You give it to a golfer who, you know, goes to the range all the time and same exact clubs. And they probably, let's say they have great clubs and they take your crappy clubs, and because they've been diligent in their pursuit and they've been watching videos and they've been going to a coach and they've been exposing themselves to other people that are good at golfing or whatever it is, they take those same crappy clubs and they whip your ass all over the course because they're using the tools correctly. So like if I have this phone in my hand, it's a tool. All right. And sure, I screw off on this thing. I play Angry Birds, do whatever it is, you know, like I waste some time for sure.
Jugs.
Yeah, that's trademarked. But I use this tool in my hand. Like how I choose to use it is going to determine the effectiveness of the tool.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is potentially one of the world's greatest resources. It is also potentially a giant waste of money and time. You know,
unless what you strive for is entertainment and playing on the phone, then it brought you exactly what you want.
Right. Sure. But hopefully we're developing somewhere else. Like we have a tool if we care about it, like if we're like, we care about developing or being better at X thing, maybe being good at video games is the thing. So the tool's great.
So let's work off the premise that the people that are listening to this show, which they are, I think that this podcast will pay dividends to people that are on the path of self-discovery and enlightenment and improvement, and those that possibly are not, because they may have children, or what I mean by that is there may be somebody on this program that's like, I don't need to hear this. Like I'm on this path, but you may have a kid like I once was, or maybe like you, that didn't understand some of these things. So it's like one of the things I'm having to learn as a parent now, and my kids are wonderful, is they are kids. You know, sometimes the wife will be like, well, you're being easy. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I fully understand like that you need to show discipline and take the old belt off, the coat hanger. I'm just kidding, folks. I'm just kidding. But you sometimes need to remember like that, like 18-year-old me doesn't comprehend or wouldn't comprehend what 40-year-old me thinks about and comprehends.
Right.
You know, so where I'm going with that is that perhaps remembering that and keeping it in mind, it will affect our leadership style or the way we try to influence others, because we're not always in the same spot.
Right, we're not. And so my wife and I have an age difference as well. And
yeah, she's like 19 or 20.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm 37, she's 30. And that may not seem like a lot. I know, super. My wife is like legit a smoke show. It makes no sense how attractive my wife is compared to me. Not compared to me, like in general. And then there's me. I'm like, gosh.
I find you pretty attractive.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I haven't had pants on this whole podcast.
I was hoping the camera would prove that point, but it hasn't yet.
I'm trying something new. I've been standing up and down because sometimes sitting for a lot is not fun.
Yeah, it mutes the hip a little bit and it gets it all stuck, and it makes not great for range of motion.
Keep going. I've derailed you.
Yeah. So like my wife and I, like, we're at different places in our life. Like I've in 16 months when I retire from the military, like I will actually have had a whole career. Okay. Like we're in different places. So like when I think about stuff with her versus stuff with me, like I also realize my wife is in a different place. Like she just beat cancer. She's in a different place than me. Okay. Like, so when you think about 18-year-old me is going to be in a different place than me. But if I can so we talk about the accessible, relatable, applicable. If I can make this or make a podcast or what you're doing and what I'm doing, you know, accessible to someone else and make them better. And like an 18-year-old is able to pick up one aspect of this podcast. Like, oh, like that turns the gears a little bit. That's rad. That's awesome. Okay. You know, and then they have a conversation with 25-year-old someone and they're like, they take the conversation a little bit further. You know, that's cool. If we can get that happening, that becomes a pretty effective tool, I think.
As you're talking, I'm sitting here just pondering something else you just talked about with your wife. And
I saw you just pull up jugs. Don't lie.
No, I was reading my notes.
Okay.
You're talking about the stress and working through some of these things. I'm bringing this back full circle to where we began. Besides your military life, you've had these big obstacles to overcome in your personal life. You know, like what's some advice for folks with that kind of shit going on?
You mean like my wife having cancer?
Correct.
Okay. So I actually had this conversation earlier today, which is great. And I talk about a lot where people say like, oh, I couldn't imagine that, or I could never do that. I would largely disagree with most everyone when they say that, because I always say like, you'd be surprised what you can do when like it's what you have to do. Okay, you stop thinking about it. Like no one wants to get wet. Like you get outside of your truck or car when you go to the grocery store and you're like, oh God, I'm gonna get wet. You know, it sucks. But if like a kid is in the street and they're about to get hit, or like someone's in danger, you know, and it's raining outside, you don't think twice about it being raining or getting wet. You just do it. Okay. So I think a lot of people will be first of all, surprised at what they're capable of if they just choose to like believe that they're capable. Like, and that sounds kind of silly, but like, don't discount yourself. People are probably more capable than they think they are, honestly. And secondly, like, I talk about stress exposure. Okay. And if we choose to be very comfortable all the time, we talked about, like, we have temperature controlled seats, and my steering wheel is a heated steering wheel. Like, one of the greatest inventions I've ever personally owned in my entire life is a heated steering wheel. Like, my
That's
goodness.
fancy.
I know, right? It's phenomenal. But we rush from a temperature controlled house to a temperature controlled vehicle to a temperature controlled building. Okay. In our Patagucci's, whatever kind of warm clothing, or, less than warm clothing, depending on the kind of weather. Like, we're constantly trying to control the comfort we have in our lives, or optimize the comfort we have in our lives, whatever that is. And what that means, like, we are avoiding uncomfortable situations. If we continue to do that, okay, and go back to the Mike Tyson thing, where, like, he only had 2 hard fights or whatever, right? Like, and those two fights he lost were the ones that were actually hard ones. He wasn't ever exposed to, like, the true challenge, if that's what that dude was saying, was like this stress exposure. So if we continually choose to, in an intelligent way, not a stupid way, in an intelligent way, expose ourselves to challenging situations. It doesn't have to be physically challenging. It can be mentally challenging. It can be emotionally challenging. It could be whatever. If it's stressful, it's challenging, then, and we become familiar, or we don't lose familiarity with that kind of stressful experience, or that challenging experience, or that challenging environment, then I would say more likely you're going to have success when stress does actually in fact appear. For example, my wife had cancer. Okay, everyone's like, oh, you did so great, Peyton. You were always making jokes and you were always positive. I was like, first of all, like, what else was there to be?
Sure.
Okay. My wife can do whatever the hell she wants. She has cancer. Like, my job is to, like, be as good of a husband at that point as I can. And what that means is make my wife smile, taking care of everything I can for her. And it was stressful, but, like, I think because I fortunately been exposed to enough stressful experiences in my life, where, like, things were hard or uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I was able to, like, the situation is irrelevant at that point. Okay. It's just applying the same mindset and the same skills to the situation. So my wife having cancer wasn't an issue in the sense that, like, I didn't know how to deal with it, or I didn't know what I was going to do. Yeah. I knew immediately what I was going to do. And it helps that I love my wife dearly. And she's a far better person than I am. But I was like, okay, cool. I do this now. This is what I do now to make this be successful and do my part. And that's it. And maybe it's because I've been exposed to stressful situations in the past. Maybe it's because I love my wife a lot. Maybe it's a combination of those things. But I called it my surge operation, like my surge phase. Like, I knew that I would have to be a little more switched on and kind of go, like, deplete my tank a little more, going back to that team concept. Mm-hmm. Where, like, my wife needed me to carry 100% of the load and then some. Like, that is if there's ever a time where I should be doing that, it'd be when my wife has cancer. Sure. So I willingly, happily will do it again in a heartbeat, do the same thing. But I think having some continual exposure to physical, mental, environmental stresses help me be comfortable in the situation. So I think if people can do that in an intelligent way, then new experiences aren't so stressful, or different experiences aren't so stressful. Which doesn't mean they're easy.
Frees you up to do whatever you have to do to surmount the
It doesn't mean the situation's, like, magically easy. Then you're like, oh, well, I've been exposed to stress. This situation's no longer hard. False, potentially. You're just more capable of being successful inside the situation. Mm-hmm. I always say, like, especially at the end of his career, you never saw Peyton Manning, like, appear stressed. Because there's not a play he hadn't seen. There's not like, maybe it was a different play, different field, different team, but it's not like it was new to him. He's like, oh, cool. I've seen this screenplay before. I've seen this pass before. I've seen this block rush before. I've seen this. I've experienced this physical pain before. Cool. I got it. I'm familiar with that. Let's be successful. Okay. So, but he, had a lifetime of reps. He chose to be in a situation where he was taking a lifetime of reps. If we stop taking reps, of course we suck when we go to the golf course. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So, and like I said, it's not linear, man. Like you're going to have times where you fall off and, you know, you have to catch back up and do better. That's just life, bro. So I think when people talk about these things, and I try to say this a lot in my podcast, like a lot of the stuff I talk about, or like, it sounds really cool. You know, it's like, oh yeah, cool. Just expose myself to stress and everything's easy and it's wonderful. Like it's not. And everyone's pretty human, you know, like people experience troubles. They have setbacks. They don't hit, you know, the success marker they want to hit to, you know, maybe they exceed it sometimes, maybe they don't. Like it's okay. Like you have to give yourself a break, assess what you've done, you know, characterize experience and move forward.
I dig it.
Yeah, man.
I think you touched on something a minute ago. I think we oftentimes don't give ourselves enough credit for our abilities or potential abilities. And then when we don't give ourselves credit for that, we don't believe in ourselves. We don't know what we're capable of or what our limits truly are. Most people never experience really finding what they're capable of or what they're made of.
Yeah. And
not just physically, but emotionally, intellectually.
And what do you think that's a shame? What do you think about that statement? Oh God.
I think if you guys are not watching this, he was clearing his throat and he hates as I said earlier, the mouth sounds. So I'm just messing with him. What do I think about that? I think, you know, this might piss people off, but I don't like rap music, right? Whatever. I don't like it. It doesn't resonate with me, or I don't really care for a lot of pop music. It just doesn't do anything for me. Some people love it. It's their jam. My son loves some freaking hip hop, and he also digs like some of the shit I listen to. But I'm not mad at him because he likes something I don't like. So if some people never want to find that, your point about, I have some family, some friends that it was just well below zero here.
Right.
And all people talked about was the weather, man. Like, and it got to the point where it was like, shut the hell up. Like, yes, it's cold. And I even caught myself, like today, it's 20 degrees here, 19 degrees. I've got on a hoodie, by the way, from my friends Blue Pan Pizza in Denver, Colorado. Great peoples. Giles owns it.
Nice.
They won a world championship for their Detroit style pizza. Anyway, it's like, if that's what you want to surround yourself with, like comfort or not pushing yourself, or like, well, why would I want to do push-ups? It hurts. Well, why would I not want to do push-ups? Yes, it hurts, but I also like that I'm 40 years old and can still rip out dozens of push-ups. Not to show off, but I'm still mobile. So some people just go ahead.
No, I was like, because I want to be able to pick my ass up when I'm 80.
Yeah, exactly. So it begs the question of we begin every training course, not to talk about me, but we begin every training course usually somewhere in the first half hour. I ask everybody, why are you here? And I let everybody answer before I say shit. And everybody's like, hey, my name's Mr. Knipple, and I want to shoot better to protect myself. And anybody that's listening that's attended our course, I'm not insulting you. Or they say I want to be able to teach my family how to protect themselves. And it's something like that. Or I want to be better at shooting. And we'll kind of wrap it up, and I'll go, well, what does that mean? Like, what is better? What is and we start to try to distill and define and hone in. So it all comes down to what's the goal. So I asked them, before we continue, what's the goal? I want to shoot better. What does that mean? More accurate. What does that mean?
Yeah.
You want to be able to hit that tree 1,000 feet away with your Glock, or do you want to be able to shoot a fly while it's flying through the air from the holster in the dark? I don't know what that means. So how can you attach any plan to a ill-defined or undefined
unmeasurable goal?
Yeah. So to your question of how do I feel about some people wishing to go through life like that, if that's their choice, man, like I think some people, it comes down to that desire of I want to achieve something. I want to cut the grass in half the time. I want to run a marathon. I want to make the best souffle. I want to have a podcast that's listened to, not to be famous, but to touch people and help them. Well, like now you can start to apply some actionable steps.
Yes.
So I don't think it's right or wrong. I think it's just some people want to listen to rap, man.
Yeah. And it kind of goes back to like, how do you get like people to like want to like listen to a podcast or to develop or change themselves? Like, dude, it comes down to like, what do you want out of your life? You know, and we talk about like a legacy and like, you're like, hey, if this podcast, you know, what's the one thing you want? I'm like, well, I want this thing to happen, you know? And so I have plans and actionable goals to get there. Right. And then if someone walks through life and they don't have an end state for living.
Yeah.
Like, okay, cool. You're probably going to not do much of anything. And that's cool, man.
Which is okay.
I'm not going to hang out with you most likely.
We talked about it the other day. What did the judge say?
He said the world needs ditch diggers.
The world needs ditch diggers too. Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to be one.
No.
You don't have to choose to be one. Just like, you know, people are going to work at like low paying jobs or like minimum wage jobs. Like you don't have to choose to do that for the whole life. If you choose to do that for your whole life, then like the expectation, like you should then realize like these are outcomes. Okay. Things we do have outcomes. So
really what we're doing, you and I, is we're talking to people that maybe are in the same boat or walking the same path that we're walking. Like, hey, fellow sojourner, there's some rocks up there. I've been down that way. There's some thorns. There's some quicksand. We're just like, and I don't feel enlightened. I don't feel like I've reached some appreciable level of excess where I'm now an oracle. But I will say I have been kicked in the dick. Sometimes
right in the dick.
Myself 100 times or more. I have eaten crow and dropped the ball so many times that I have figured out a few ways not to do it.
Right.
And like that's, go ahead.
That's, I mean, a lot of my podcast is like how I the first 50 times. And then, you know, you can always fall back on the classic Thomas Edison remark where like took him 1,000 light bulbs. He used his own beard hair for one filament just to see what would happen. And they're like, dude, you just like 1,000 times. He's like, yeah, man, I know how to not make a light bulb 1,000 different ways now. You know,
you made Thomas Edison sound kind of stupid. Yeah, man. I don't think they talk like that.
I think you did. Did you ever watch, you watched Drunk History? I feel like you're a Drunk History guy. Like
I actually don't, but I've seen it.
Like that's what they do. Like they just totally underwhelm like the actual like factual portions of history. And he's like, yeah, man, like I was going to build a light bulb and shit. So like, let there be light, Eureka. And like, you want to party and meet chicks? And like, yeah, cool. Let's party. Now we got light bulbs. We can stay out all night. Like, like that's what it is. But like the meat of that story is like homeboy made 1,000 mistakes and persisted. Yeah. He was like, I'm going to do this. So like
he found 1,000 paths, not that he knew that he didn't need to go back down. 1,000.
Right. And he can share those 1,000 paths. Like, yo, dog, like that way sucks. This place is this way, super rad. Do that way. And then go that way and find a better way than that way. And now I have like smart lights that I talk to in my house and they just like turn on.
Turn on.
Exactly. And that's Thomas Edison was like, yeah, man, let's just make some smart lights, bro.
What a world that we live in, that just 100 or so years ago, people were burning the fat of whales.
Right. But that stunk like just
150-ish, but
garbage. Yeah. Just, oh, yeah, you must have that new fat. Like, nah, man, my whale fat's old. It smells like garbage. We're like,
that's dude, funny.
You're like, and I'm like, man, I need to make more of my light bulbs in my house smart light bulbs. Like, what the
I've got LEDs in this room as we're talking. They're, you know, like studio style lights, and what we have available to us, it blows my mind. I have kind of decided back to this point that like I won't waste energy with people that I don't need to convince anybody of anything, because we're all worm food. This is Mickey's mantra. And if you can use your life as you see fit, this is not me speaking to you, but to anybody, like in general, kind of my thought, like if you don't, you want to be a dancer, a freaking movie star, a cook, a baker, whatever, it's on you. It's your journey. So I'm not going to tell somebody else how to live, because that's extremely obtuse to suggest that we should do that. But like, if you want to hear what like I've got to say and you're on a similar path, like climb on board this love train. You know,
woo, woo. Yeah. Just I want to point out that you used the word appreciable, oracle, and obtuse in like the last 2 minutes, and it's great. Your word choice, your vernacular, vocabulary on point, brother. I'm digging it.
I barely graduated from 8th grade, and I have a list of words that I have to use. I'm just kidding, but thank you, appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
You know what I'm saying, though.
Yeah, like and if you want to be part of it, like let's do rad shit together. Like, if not, like that's cool, man. Like I'm not, like you said, you're not going to waste time on people that aren't like into your shit, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes sense. Like you have a clearly defined path, or you're defining your path, like, or refining, I would say probably.
Yeah, I think for me, it's constant refinement.
And that's, I mean, look at it like when you look back 10 years from now, you'd be like, oh yeah, cool. I'm refining. Like you're going to be in a different place, like probably doing different shit, or like a different version of the same shit. You know, it's just a continual evolution, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's super cool. But like, if you don't take that, like if you don't try, like you're not going to evolve. Like you're just gonna be like, oh, and you're just gonna get embittered against society because like you see everything around you changing and you're just kind of stuck. That's a choice, man. And I'm not trying to be a dick about it, because there's people that will forever and always outperform me without seeming to even try potentially. And they're like, oh, like that's cool. But it won't be for lack of effort on my part. You know, like I'm always going to be trying to do better, to be something, like to improve, you know.
It's in your nature.
Yeah, I don't understand anything else at this point, at least.
Sometimes I wonder though, like what's the point? And I don't mean that like in a negative way, but like we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Right. So like some people look at that and they're just like, I'm just gonna like not try because I'm gonna die anyway.
It's an option.
Yeah. Or I'm just going to like get by. Like I'm going to go find that job that dad told me to get, where I'll get a 401k and the company will match it, and I'll retire and, you know, have a couple vacations to Florida a few times a year. Like that's okay too. Or then there's some people that regardless of this impending dirt nap, they want to be a meteor, man. You know, they want to just, and that could mean a million different things too. Like you could want to be a star on the silver screen, or have your name written in
silver screen. We're doing that right now.
Silver screen, or have a monument.
How old are we?
No, I'm not saying us.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
No, but some people, you could definitely see when somebody's intention is to be known, which I don't think is a bad thing. If that's what you want to do, like, you know, screw it. But Marcus Aurelius talked about that. You know, some men are looking to build a monument to themselves, and it's none of those things are wrong. But it comes back to that, like, what's your goal? And whatever it is, man, as long as it ain't hurting somebody, get a plan, make some steps that you can apply action to. What did you say, Jocko? I don't try to quote other podcasters a lot, so I don't even know what these people. I don't even know who that guy is. He's
okay.
Master, I have an extravaganza.
Yeah, you have an extravaganza. It's a whole new thing now.
He said what? His 2 words?
Default aggressive.
No, the other one about
prioritize and execute.
Prioritize
and execute.
Execute. You know, it's kind of the same thing I'm talking about. Like define a goal and apply action to define some actionable steps.
Yeah, and that's why we said like there's no original idea, just an original application. And you know, just like if you're looking at a target straight on, you shift one, you know, to left or right, the perspective of the target changes. So once again, like you, me, Jocko, Tony Robbins, thought leader, whoever, are all thinking about the same shit, but maybe from a different angle, slightly different perspective, we come up with something just slightly different, and it moves the needle just a little bit further. But we have to have a goal. We have to have a plan to get there. We have to have, we have to be intentionally doing something deliberate that makes.
I like that.
You know, so if we're not, then you should expect a comparable outcome.
Sure.
You know, and you just got to keep getting after it. Otherwise, you atrophy, like literally atrophy. And that's not what I'm about. And I don't, like you said, I don't think people listening to this podcast are about that either. So, you know, and what's cool, what I've in my podcast is very new. Like people are like in a very small scale are still talking about it. Like people at my CrossFit gym, people at my work, people that I see infrequently are like, hey man, I listen to your podcast. Like this one thing was cool. I'm like, great. And they're like, hey, I was talking about this thing you brought up in your podcast at my work. And now we're extending it. Okay. So if that's all that ever happens, cool, man. Okay. Cause I don't have all the answers. I don't pretend to.
Sure.
But a bunch of people thinking deliberately about a thing, probably something cool is going to happen.
Yeah. It can't not.
Right.
Like it can't not. That's the fun thing. You just said, like, we're all like, if you take some of the grandmaster shooters I am friends with and train with, we talk about, for example, how to hold a pistol, just to make it relevant. Pretty much anybody that teaches how to hold a pistol or a carbine now teaches like one or two main methods, because it's like after you look at this problem long enough, like we all only have, for the most part, hands that like these and bodies like this. It's like, all right, this we figured is like the best way biomechanically to attach ourselves to this machine and get a repeatable result. Nobody's going to like walk in and be like, actually guys, like if you do it like this, like there's been thousands and thousands of people. So like if we collectively are looking at things like, instead of how to just make more money, but how to impact young men in a meaningful way to make better leaders for the future, we're going to come up with some pretty cool ways of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's never going to be some grand leap where you're like, hey man, let's hold the gun this way. And then tomorrow it's like, totally brand new way of holding guns. It's not some grand leap. It's, you know, a bunch of other people looking at the thing deliberately and like, what about this? 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 And then eventually over time it evolves into something more effective. Maybe the platform changes, maybe the design changes, you know, maybe the rules, whatever the it is, you know, and then you have to evolve, you have to change.
Yeah. But
it's not some grand, like, hey, like today I, you know, breathe water and tomorrow I'm walking on land. Like that ain't a thing. Like it's going to be slow and deliberate. And the only way for that to happen is to get as many eyes on the problem as possible. So
I agree.
I think that's what's cool about this thing. And I didn't have all these ideas. I didn't think all these thoughts about stuffs until like I started exposing myself to other people. Like I may have had like an introductory rudimentary thing, and I was like, I need to know more about that thing. Like then this person, then that person. Like my floor, like you can't see it here, is like covered in, like littered in books. Okay, like my phone is full of podcasts or full of audio books. You know, I've got tabs open on my computer. I'm like exposing myself to different shit. That's the only way I'm getting different thoughts in my head, or divergent views, if you will. But you have to do it.
Yeah.
You know, and then if like not everyone, but like other people in your, you know, whatever are doing the same thing, like all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is a thing now. So I think that's cool.
How do people find you?
On the Instagrams, I guess. Instagram is armed_intellectual. So just like it sounds, ARMED_intellectual. I'm not going to spell that word because it's too dangerous.
Are you armed right now?
I do have something within arm's reach.
All right.
Okay. And there's that name is essentially potentially a play on words, or it has multiple meanings, if you will. So the armed_intellectual in the podcast, or my extravaganza, if you will. I'm going to think of something better than extravaganza, just so you know.
I just popped in my head when
I like it though. Like, I like extravaganza. Damn it, I'm gonna have to think of something better. But the Armed Intellectual is the podcast, and that's on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify. I don't have a lot of platforms right now, probably because I've been just too lazy to like download 15 different accounts for shit and like upload my RSS feed. But yeah, iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, 3 main platforms I'm on. Also, the link to the podcast is in my Instagram bio.
Okay.
So you can go straight to from there. But that's the 2 main things, just Instagram and iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify are where I'm at. So yeah.
Very cool, man. I appreciate you taking the time to chat. I think we covered a lot of various topics, but we also, and I know in my own head, induced some various useful thoughts. Got me thinking about a couple things. Mainly, one of them was how I approach some of the methodologies of even having a podcast, because I don't often have somebody on that's another podcaster, or in my case, extravaganza.
God, I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah. We covered a lot of broad topics, but I think for the people listening, and if you agree, leave a comment on whatever platform you're listening or viewing on. But I think it's all good stuff. If you guys are not following us on whatever platform you're listening or viewing on, please do. And if you are on like iTunes, Google, Stitcher, any of those things, please put up a review. Of course, it should be 5 stars or more if they allow it.
Yeah.
That was kind of a joke. I'm going to have to go over and check out your podcast and download one. And
yeah, man, it's almost a variety show right now. Like I focus on like the leadership stuff, like the more like, I'm not gonna say formulaic, but more kind of like codified, like leadership, like change, resistance to change and things like that. And then kind of more, just some more diversified, like kind of humanness, like the human topics we discussed today. Yeah. I think those are important to developing self-awareness of like, I think that's the step when you're like, oh shit, that's me. You're like, I do that thing. How do I not do that thing? Or how to make that thing better? Okay. That's the initial step. So that's kind of where my podcast lies. I'll probably approach like some more kind of like codified leadership stuff this week is probably what's coming out. And I drop my podcast every Monday around like 6:30 Eastern time in the morning. But yeah, and I like the fact that we did a lot of variety today, honestly.
I didn't know what we were going to talk about when we started talking, other than the one topic about the home. So it kind of bounced around a little bit, but I think
it's indicative of like our initial conversation though. Like I told my wife, and
also which I was not wearing pants during.
I think I just have that effect on you. But I love the fact that, because my last name is Knipple, it looks like nipple. You didn't hesitate. You just went right in and you said, nipple. Like that was the first thing you said to me. Like, I'm like, we're going to get along just fine. And then we covered this extreme, like kind of breadth of information in that phone call. And it's cool to be able to just immediately be able to do that, so to speak, with someone. This is a blast for me, man. I appreciate being able to share your extravaganza.
Awesome. I find that, do you remember Bill and Ted?
Oh, dude. Yeah.
Somebody quoted this the other day, and they said it was my quote. I had to correct them because when I quoted it, I wrote Bill and Ted's. I think it was the Bogus Journey, not Excellent Adventure. They're on stage in the Grim Reaper. They're in a band, and the Grim Reaper plays a song, and he says, "You might be a king or a little street sweeper, but sooner or later you'll dance with the Reaper." And it's like, when it comes to communication, I don't care if you're a judge, a president, a senator, or the dude that picks up my trash, who, by the way, my trash man has a cooler name than your trash name. His name is Darth. That's his name. Yeah.
That's so cool. His parents are probably rad as
or one or the other.
Yeah.
Like we wrap so much useless thought around like communication. Like, should I get on the phone with this guy and like beat around the bush for 10 minutes? Or should I tell him his name makes me think of nipple and get to it?
Yeah, man. I loved it. I was like, game on already. This is perfect. And
I may or may not have asked you how big your penis was in imperial measurements. You may
did
not have answered.
You did, and I did. And
You're like, what should I say right now? I'm trying to develop a business, and you guys are sick. We made that up.
Like my 5th episode is Does Tony Robbins Fart? Like that's the title. Like of my 5th episode. So once like I said, it's a variety show almost right now. Like the week before that was like leadership. And I was like, does Tony Robbins fart? Goddamn right he does.
Tune in next week to find out.
Yeah. So yeah, man. So the imperial measurement, question was relevant and expected.
Tune in next time to find out exactly how big.
Ugh. Good luck. It's a bunch of dudes tuning in. We're like, oh man.
A bunch of dudes are like, is he really going to tell us? There's something wrong with me. My dad's told me that since I was a little kid. I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I don't either, man. Like, my wife, it's Peter Pan syndrome for sure. She's always like, why are you the way that you are? I'm like, dude, how much would it suck if I wasn't though? Like, how much fun am I? Like, like, thank God I am the way I am. Cause man, like it'd be really boring if I wasn't.
I really right now want to break into a song almost like some Disney-esque character, like
it'll be sung by Mickey and Nips McGee. That's the band. Yeah.
Dink, 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 dink,
ding, 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 ding. All right, now this is off the rails.
This is going off the tracks. Hey, I appreciate you, Mr. Knipple, joining us. Did you just?
I have never said your last name. Is it Stooch?
Shook.
Shook,
like Von Shook.
You have me shook to my core to have this opportunity with you.
Like he shook me all night long.
Oh, damn it. That's even better.
If I had the money, I would buy the rights to AC/DC's song, and it would come on every time I walked into a room, into a restaurant, just like boom, and I'd sit down, and it would kind of fade out.
Dude, it's awesome.
Expensive.
I love it. Yeah, so Mr. Shook, it's been an honor, and I appreciate you popped my cherry, by the way. I've never been on anyone else's podcast besides my own. It's like having to buy your own friends so you start your own podcast, but you popped my cherry. It's my first ever guest appearance on a podcast.
It's funny. Once upon a time when I talked about doing this, my buddy Z and I kind of, this was our brainchild, and Z gets on as often as he can because we have awesome conversations. And for a minute, I'm like, how will I find enough people to talk to? And I have a list of people that, one, I have people ask, can I be on?
Yeah.
And then two, I'm talking to you, and it was like, hey, we're having a nice conversation. Let's record this shit. And
yeah, man.
Always, I'm sure we'll have tons of folks say, hey, that was great.
I hope so. Shit.
Funny, because it's like all we did was just tell bad jokes.
Yeah. Dad jokes, man. I'm a big fan. But kind of like the movie The Last Samurai. I don't know if you watch a lot of movies. You said you're not a movie guy.
I love movies. I'm not a TV guy.
Okay. He's like the end scene where everyone's dying. He's like, I'll miss our conversations. Like, dude, how cool is to have like a badass conversation and get better, like learn, grow, develop. Like it's about something you enjoy and matters to you. Like that's
changing the world.
That's a day, man. Like that's a good fucking day. So
can I get it, amen?
Amen. Yeah, you got me all fired up.
With any of you out there that needed that type of communication.
But who doesn't?
Hey, if you're not following me on these channels, as I said, please do forward this stuff to your friends. Put it out there into Facebook and other internet zones, and go give Mr. Knipple a follow as well.
Heck yeah.
Armed_intellectual.
Hey, that's me.
Yeah. Be good. The rest of you guys, tell somebody you love them. Love yourself. Just don't do it in front of a mirror.
Well, yeah. Okay. Have a great day.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. training at CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.